Dublin beating Kerry in an All-Ireland final has a pretty familiar ring to it this season. It was the 50th year of the Ladies Football Championship, and it was Dublin who prevailed, and pretty comfortably, all told. They built up a big lead early on and never really relinquished it. There was a Kerry goal late on to put a bit of a sheen on the scoreboard, but it was Dublin's day. 18 points to Kerry's 110. Michael Verney of the Irish Independent is with us. Hey, Michael.
Joe, how are you?
I am in good form. I might just play a clip first of all because it sets an interesting context for this game. Mick Bowen, Dublin manager, talked to Aisling O'Reilly after the game, and I suppose the message from Bowen, as we'll hear, and the players across yesterday evening, they didn't really expect to win in All-Ireland this year. Have a listen.
It's hard to believe. Genuinely, like, this has been very different because this wasn't on the script back in October, November time. I think the incremental improvements this year have been far greater than any other season we've had the group. So, you know, we're obviously absolutely thrilled.
Yeah, when you say it wasn't on the script, so you didn't think at the start of the year that we're targeting an All-Ireland win?
No.
Because maybe the turnover in players and obviously a lot of the young girls coming through?
We'd lost so much, and then we'd setbacks along the way. Jess Tobin did her ACL, one of our experienced defenders, and all of a sudden Hannah Leahy, a girl who was coming back, did her ACL again, and all of a sudden we're looking down the line at babies coming into the team, and it takes time at this level, to try and learn the ropes, and then I just, over the last 7 or 8 weeks, Niamh Donlan played a challenge game against Mayo a couple of weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, whatever it was, 5 weeks ago maybe, and has won a position for herself and given some account of herself. Niamh Crowley, straight out of minor. I can't get over the growth.
Yeah, it really is unbelievable. I think up until the semi-final, you went completely under the radar maybe. Nobody was really mentioning Dublin for the All-Ireland title because maybe of those reasons a lot of the girls we know stepped away. Is this more satisfying that you've done it this way?
I certainly think it's, for me personally, it's been possibly the most satisfying project I've ever been involved in, because it wasn't even a pipeline dream at the start, and I suppose that's what's incredible about it, because so many of the management team and obviously the older players committed to this, really not expecting a whole heap out of it, but they knew, in order to just steady the ship, this is what was needed.
Babies, Michael. Not since David O'Leary have I heard babies. So for Dublin and Mick Bowen, it's very satisfying. As Aisling referenced there, it was really only after Dublin demolished Cork in the semi-final that I think people started looking their direction, because Kerry for a lot of this year looked like the team to beat.
Yeah, I think it's gas to hear Mick saying that. It's basically the opposite of the GAA, you wrote us all off. It's basically we wrote ourselves off, and we never thought we were in the equation. And that's something he said probably before the final, and he said it in every different interview he did after the game yesterday, including the one I was involved in. He kept harking back to really dark times in October, November. I think they're missing, all told, I think 7 players with a combined 28 All-Stars from the 2020 All-Ireland final. So there's been a massive, massive turnover. And he said, they'd had different setbacks throughout the year, and he thought this one is the one that'll drive us over the edge. And they were able to keep hanging on. And then there was another one. He's like, okay, we can't stay going on with all these setbacks. But they were able to build up all this momentum. It's funny, you said the Cork game, and the Cork game was probably the one where the public probably realised Dublin are humming, Dublin are coming. Hannah Tyrrell referenced the Donegal game in the quarter-final. She said, we knew we were in good shape when we avenged that defeat from the year before. And I know Cora Staunton referenced that game against Mayo that Mick referenced, the challenge game, where she, by all accounts, I think it was behind closed doors, but they absolutely ripped Mayo asunder. So they weathered a lot of storms by the sound of things, and Mick didn't go into detail on all the different tales of things that happened, but I'm sure he will over the coming days, and someone will sit down with him, because it sounds like an interesting one. But they, whether they thought they were going to be there or not, they delivered a phenomenal performance on the game's biggest occasion. It was never really in any doubt. A quarter into the game, you're thinking, Dublin are slaloming through here. And just one thing on the style of play as well. we're used to lateral play in men's football now. There was no lateral play, little or no lateral play yesterday. Every time a Dublin player got the ball, they were going at Kerry. They were going down the throat of them. They created some great scores. Hannah Tyrrell obviously got some great scores in the first half. Jennifer Dunn is an absolute powerhouse. She's heading off to the AFLW on Wednesday, going out to the Brisbane Lions. But it mightn't have been telegraphed, but it was some performance in a final. And you could see how much it meant to them, very like the men's team as well. It was maybe an unexpected one, and those ones are probably the sweetest ones.
Yes, all the sweeter for it. It does undercut in this era of psychology and self-help and positive thinking, it's a novel approach to say we have no chance for most of the year, and then to put in one of the great All-Ireland performances. They destroyed Kerry on the kickouts as well. I mean, it was complete domination. From a neutral point of view, it was disappointing in that as a contest it was a bit of a damn squib. Like at one stage Dublin were 8-3 up, and that was pretty close to half time. It was 11-4 at half time, and in a context of a 7 or 8 point lead when Kerry have managed 3 or 4 points, the game is over at half time effectively. So from the neutral perspective it was a pity, but I mean, if you're a Dublin fan, you're kind of just purring at the display. Even physically, Michael, they just look several rungs ahead of Kerry on the ladder.
They did. Even some of the younger players that Mick referenced there, babies, as he said, like they were taking on seasoned, shall we say, adult footballers, and they were taking them on for pace, and they were going, if they weren't going around them, they were going through them where possible as well. And I know they referenced the S&C and said there was massive gains in the S&C this year, but like, just to time it so well and to deliver that type of performance, and said it was never really in doubt. Once they got, I think they were 11-3 up after 25 minutes. I think Hannah Tyrrell kicked the last of her 8 points. Amazingly, all her 8 point haul, all in the first half. 4 from frees, 4 from play. I don't know, I think she's a bit David Clifford-esque with that the style she kicks, even that lovely kind of lazy almost left foot. And they managed the game really well. Call a spade, they were cynical at times, regularly throughout the game, even fouling Kerry in areas of the field where they were just building up ahead of steam. Maybe take someone down, or two women in around the tackle, halted for 10 or 15 seconds. They were able to reset and funnel back. And I suppose when you're talking, that's maybe some of the tactics that they use. But Leah Caffrey done a magnificent job on Louise Nimar Hertig. Like, she done a brilliant job. Louise is one of the best footballers in the country, and she went toe to toe with her and probably came out best in that duel. And Kerry really needed Louise to have a huge game, and I know she got a goal to keep them in it at the end and give them some hope. But you're looking at most of the main duels around the field, Dublin won nearly them all.
I suppose when that cynical failing's happening, it's understandable why a team would do it. And it was, interestingly, Dublin felt aggrieved at Kerry's tackling after the sides met in the group stages at Parnell Park, where Kerry won by 2
points. Mick cleared that up, actually. Mick wanted to clear that up. Yeah, he wanted to clear that up after the game. And I take his point. I wouldn't, and this is basically kind of his point, you wouldn't condone bullying in any shape or form, in any walk of life, in any part of society, except on a GAA pitch.
He was okay
if that makes sense. And basically what he said was, we were woman handled, I suppose. We were beaten to the ball. They had more fire, more physicality. They wanted it more. Yesterday, you'd have to say the boot was on the other foot, and Dublin were the aggressors.
You do need a strong referee, is the point I was just about to make, though. If there is cynical fouling when you're stopping teams in transition, you do need a referee to start handing out cards if it's to be curtailed. And Kerry management alluded to that quite heavily. They said that they didn't want to get too into it, but they said what they didn't want to get too into several times, and then, but we won't get into it, kind of an approach. And I suppose they will quietly feel somewhat aggrieved that the referee didn't punish that more.
Yeah, it was probably a bit Davy Fitzgerald-esque. I'm not going to get into it, but if you keep asking me, I probably will get into it.
Yeah.
They were definitely going to feel aggrieved, and I was looking down, and regularly throughout the game, Declan Quill and Dara Long were having fairly animated conversations with Maggie Farley, who was doing fourth official. So they weren't happy with what was going on. But you'd have to say, if it's relatively within the rules, Dublin were doing it in clever areas of the field, and it wasn't unbelievably obvious. It wasn't Sean Kavanagh and Conor McManus obvious. So you'd have to say it was it was kind of smart, and they got away with it.
For Hannah Tyrrell, I think most newspapers today are adorned with photos of her and her baby daughter. Her wife gave birth recently, and her CV now kind of elevates her to a certain level in Irish sport. There aren't many people who can say they've won an FAI Cup, that they've won a Six Nations, and that they've kicked 8 points in an All-Ireland final, 8 of which all came in the first half. So that's kind of ridiculous, really. Carla Rowe, 4 points in the second half, one at the end where she ran about 30, 40, 50 metres Michael Donlan style and knocked it over to kind of seal the win. It was to the fore. And then you mentioned Jennifer Dunn. She scored 2 points for Dublin. I just have a clip of her here, Michael. She makes inadvertently, she's talking about just how good the camp has been, but she does make an interesting point, I would think, where Dublin resources have them ahead of the pack, particularly in the ladies game. Have a listen.
This is his 7th year, so it's my 6th year. So I came in as an 18-year-old, probably a naive young girl. I think I was doing my leaving cert that year. So to think that I've kind of grown, and just even my physique and the way I've kind of different things, like obviously for a few years I was coming in off the bench and making an impact, to now being able to kind of control the team, and at the middle of the park it's a huge position. So he's definitely done so much for us as a team, but there's been so many new people coming in this year. There was someone you could turn to, a defence coach, a forwards coach, S&C, nutrition. There's someone for every role. So if you had any query or concern, there was someone that could help you and support you. So he obviously put that in place as well, to think that he could get all those people together. He's obviously left a huge impact on Dublin GAA the last few years, and as you said, 2021, 2022, they were tough places, the final and then the quarter-final last year, which was a shock for most of us. A lot of people questioned us and thought, would they come back? But here we are. It's hard to believe.
So that's Jennifer Dunn, who, as you said, is off to Australia now and kicked 2 points. Dublin, that was their 9th senior final in 10 years. They had done the 4 in a row, and now if a new batch have come in and they have the resources that not every inter-county team would have in the ladies' game at their disposal, and the age profile is good, I mean, we could be looking at another bit of a dynasty here, I would think, Michael.
Potentially. Mick said that basically what he thought his job was for a year or two was to get them on an even keel again, progress and hand it over to somebody else, and then maybe they'd attack silverware again. So they're ahead of schedule, obviously, there. I just thought it was interesting, even after in Carla Rowe's speech, she just said, we've never been wanting for anything, and sponsors like KPMG, AIG, Bond Secures were thrown out. Like, this is, these are probably, we're talking about like multi-million euro companies, like, which a lot of
it's not Verney's Ham.
But yeah, good old Carl's Ham were a great sponsor of Offaly for years now, in fairness to them. But it's not it's not what most counties are accustomed to, shall we say. And even listen to Jennifer talk there, like, most counties are wanting for the defences coach, they are wanting for the forwards coach, they're wanting for all of those things in a year where there's been, I suppose, a lot of protests about trying to get ladies, the LGFA and Camogie Association on an even keel. Dublin are probably one of the counties that are ahead of the grade. And in fairness, since AIG came on board, like every time AIG do anything, there's a footballer, a hurler, a camogie player and a footballer, and they're all put up for interview. They're all obviously treated equally, so I'd imagine they're all been very well looked after in that regard. So they probably are ahead of the curve in that kind of respect, and that's probably worrying for the Chase and Pack, that a Dublin team, not even in transition, a Dublin team which the manager openly admits is in big trouble, can win an All-Ireland, then it's worrying probably for the Chase, well, we thought they were in the Chase and Pack, but it's worrying for all the challengers for 2024, all right.
Yeah. God help everyone if Mick Bowen says in December, I think we've a good chance this year. So, look, I guess the other side of that coin is it's great, and they're setting a standard for other counties to aspire to in terms of how players are treated, but it will take time maybe for others to catch up. What about Kerry before you go, Michael? So 2 All-Ireland defeats in a row. There had been much talk about Kerry, the backbone of their 11 All-Irelands was the 8 in a row team in the 80s, and they were level with Cork on 11, and we're looking to go one ahead. Dublin are now on 6. So it's 1993 since Kerry last won a senior All-Ireland. Few of their important players are over 30 now. You lose 2 All-Ireland finals in a row, it starts to leave a sting. Will they be back next year in a big way?
The difficulty, Joe, has been beaten in the second final is throughout the year they were brilliant, but I don't know if in the final they will feel as if they were any closer than they were the year before against Meath, and that's probably a bit of a worry. Everything was tipping along nicely. I suppose you have to talk about Siofra O'Shea's absence, even though miraculously she came on with 18 minutes to play despite doing her cruciate less than a month ago, which is phenomenal. I know Lorraine Keane did it for Offaly a couple of years ago in a junior football final, but to do that in a senior final and come on and get probably 10 or 12 possessions was absolutely phenomenal. She's a goal machine that they really missed yesterday, in her pomp. You'd expect them to be back. They were the best team probably up until the semi-final stage, but there's probably question marks of whether Declan Quill and Darragh Long will come back, and they've openly said that they're not sure about whether they'll come back. So if new management comes in there could be a bit of a transition there too, but I'd say the two lads might be coaxed to stay on because they'll know that they're close, and it's very hard to walk away when you know you're that close. And just lastly, Joe, as well, it was a really nice touch by the LGFA at half-time yesterday. So the 40, it was obviously their 50th final. The 40 previous winning captains were paraded at half-time when everybody was there. And when, we'd the guts of 50,000 there cheered them on. And there was no effect to the games that were played at half-time. There was an under-12 game being played on the left, and there was a Gaelic for Mothers game being played on the other side. Both still going ahead. Great noise in the stadium. The 40 captains been lauded rightly for what they've done for the game down through the years and all their achievements. And surely someone within the GA will think, okay, we need to look at this and we need to go back to the future and put our Jubilee teams back on a half time where they deserve to be.
Yeah, I expect they'll do that next year. Michael, great to have you on. Thanks so much.